afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So, let me start with the simple truth. APAC is the fastest growing research region in the world. We've enormous scale, diversity, and opportunity. Markets like India to Indonesia, Japan to Australia. But with opportunity, there comes an equally big challenge: fraud. Some stats over here for you. Fraud rates in APAC are often 20 to 30% higher than what we see in North America or Europe. Issues like VPN masking, automation, duplicate identities, device sharing, all of these things are happening at scale, absolutely at scale in certain markets that we know of. And this isn't just about losing incentives or budgets. Fraud distorts incidence rates, skews representativeness, inflates costs, and it ultimately misguides the decisions that businesses actually rely on. And the fact is that as digital adoption increases, fraudsters are also getting smarter. So the tools that we used to rely on a few years back simply probably do not hold up anymore. And that's why I think proactive fraud prevention isn't an optional thing in APAC. I think it's getting essential if we want reliable and trustworthy data. For those who haven't yet met me or who don't know me, my name is Arindam Bhattacharya, and I am the co-founder of Acutus AI. At Acutus, we focus on building AI-driven new age solutions for consumer insights, working on synthetic data to digital twins, all with the same goal: helping agencies and brands in APAC get consumer insights faster, cleaner, and insights that are more reliable. And today, I'm really delighted to join by Roddy Knowles, COO of dtect. Roddy, as we all know, is one of the most respected voices in our industry when it comes to research and execution. With over a decade of experience in research industry and a background in social sciences, he has dedicated his career to building products that put high quality data at the fingertips of people who need it most. He's also a driving force in the industry organizations, conferences. He's a frequent speaker and a true champion of participant-centric approaches to research. With whatever little interaction that I've had with Roddy, I think one of the things that I admire most is his ability to call out what doesn't really work. And he pushes us all towards practices that do. Again, we couldn't have asked for a better person to talk us through how dtect is tackling fraud in real time, and also discuss why it matters so much for the APAC region. So welcome, Roddy, and let's set the stage for discussion today.
Thanks for saying all those nice things. Maybe I deserve half of them, so I'll take it.
So Roddy, to kick off things, like said, when we talk of APAC research landscape, we're really talking about one of the most dynamic and diverse regions in the world. There's enormous scale from highly digitized markets like Japan, South Korea, and Australia to rapidly expanding online populations like India, Indonesia, and Vietnam. I think the scale brings huge opportunity for insights, but also makes APAC a prime target for fraud. And add to that the diversity, dozens of markets, languages, cultures, reaching such varied audiences is powerful, but it also, I know the market also creates a lot of complexity. And I think the fraudsters are basically there to exploit those cracks. And also, then in end of day, it does impact the researchers here spend enormous amounts of time and money on cleaning data after the refielding surveys, inflating cost, delayed decisions. But with this reactive thing, what's happening is by the time you're cleaning up, the damage is already done. Fraud has already distorted incidence rates. It's eroded clients' confidence. And I think that's why in APAC, proactive fraud prevention isn't optional anymore. It's really essential. I think that's exactly one of the reasons why we've partnered with dtect, because their technology, and we've used it firsthand. So the technology isn't built to stop fraud before it enters. It's really a proactive solution. But having said that, Roddy, I'd really love for you to take us deeper into how dtect works and what makes your approach different.
Totally. I appreciate that, Arindam, and I agree with everything you said. I mean, first of all, fraud is a global problem, but as you pointed out in APAC, the diversity in terms of regions and languages, if you think about APAC as a region, we sort of cobbled that together. It's a number of different cultures and communities and languages. And so while some of these problems, they are universal, they're unique in APAC as well. And to your point, I think even more of a problem. And I totally agree with you. You made the good point that the way that we've traditionally done things in the research industry is clean up the mess after the fact. And that sort of solves the problems, but it doesn't actually solve them. It just masks them. So it adds a number of complexities and headaches just in terms of the time it takes to field, the cost, dealing with reconciliations or reversals. So the operational logistics and just the cost of labor hours and cost to deal with bad quality data after the fact is a problem. But we also have to remember it's introducing bias too. So if you put your researcher hat on, you're introducing bias in ways that you really don't understand when you're cleaning out the data, going and scrambling back to refield and fill quotas and things like that. And so we built Detect with, just to solve this specific problem. So we focus on stopping survey fraud. That's all we do. Full stop. So we're not trying to sell you a sample. I'll leave that to somebody else. We're not trying to clean your data afterwards. We're just focused on keeping the bad people out and letting the good people through. So that's really our MO. That's our approach. That's all we focus on and think about all day, every day. I'll go a little bit deeper and talk about Detect and how our technology works. I won't get too far in the weeds, but I'll give you enough of a perspective for the audience to understand what we're doing and how our approach is different. First of all, when we're thinking about fraud, fraud now is different than it was. You made the point, Arindam, is different than it was a couple of years ago. I'd say it's even different than it was 6 months ago. And the trend, unsurprisingly, is we see more technology used to commit fraud. So we've always had fraud in the industry, but as technology has really become globally available, it's democratized the ability to commit fraud at scale. With AI becoming at the forefront, everyone now can use ChatGPT, Claude, whatever they want. That's enabled fraud to even scale up additionally. So the only way that we're going to stop fraud, which is a tech problem, is by solving it with tech. So at Detect, we're a tech-first company. We think about solving fraud. We're really doing it in two ways. So we have two approaches to stopping fraud again before it starts. So it's before people actually come into a survey. What we're doing with the integration with Acutus is people come into the survey. We run some different types of assessments, which I'll get into in a second. And we can bucket people into three groups. Bad, we're highly confident this is not good traffic. You do not want it in your survey. We block those people. There are people that may be suspicious. So we say they may be doing some things like using a VPN, for example, which could be an indicator of fraud, but is it in and of itself? Does it mean someone's fraudulent? Maybe on certain projects, maybe not if you're looking at people who are traveling or maybe they're in IT or something like that, certain B2B audiences where they may have a reason to use a VPN. Maybe you'll look about that as a flag, but not necessarily terminate them up front. So we bucket people as suspicious. So there's a smaller group, typically it's around 8 to 10% that we'll say is suspicious traffic. Let's look at other signals too and decide if we want to maybe clean them out after the fact, but maybe we don't want to block them, or you could decide to block them too. You can do that. And then also there's the good bucket. Hopefully the good bucket is large. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But those are the people that we allow to pass through the survey directly. So in working with Acutus through the Detect integration, you can use our bucketed approach here. For people who also have a direct API integration, you can look at certain signals. We collect a number of different signals, and you can decide which ones you want to act on in real time and which ones you may not want to act on for certain studies. So we put a ton of data at your fingertips, and we really want to make sure that we're giving you transparency into why we're flagging people and why we're saying you're bad too. This has been a challenge in the industry, is the opaqueness of with which people are being blocked sometimes. So anyone who's in the sample industry, especially on the panel side, has to deal with reversals or reconciliations, and data gets kicked back to you, and someone just says these people are bad. Okay, why? We give you the why behind it. So we can say, this is what the person is doing. They're using this sort of suspicious browser. They're using automation tools. They're doing certain things. And we get really a concrete reason to say why we're blocking people, or why ultimately, if you do have to reconcile people on the back end, you can substantiate that claim, and it makes that process a lot easier. But the goal is to reduce the number of reconciliations that you have to deal with on the back end. So with Detect, we're taking two approaches up front. The first thing we're doing is observing a number of different signals from people that are coming into a survey. So a lot of stuff that's happening behind the scenes. I could go deeper for anyone who wants to, who's a techie, but for those who aren't, a simple way to think about it is we can see a lot of different signals based on how someone is entering. We can observe things about their location. We can observe things about the browser that they're using. We can observe some of the behaviors themselves of how they're engaging with the survey or when they hit our link within the browser itself. So we can see, Are they using an automation to come in? Are they using AI agents to come in, which we've seen really creep up? And we've been testing on our side and showing how we block AI agents when they come in to take surveys. And that's becoming easier and easier for people to do. If you don't have the right tools in place, it's really, really hard to catch. We also are looking at location. So I'm not going to give you too much of the secret sauce here, but we can do a number of different things beyond just looking, are they using a VPN? We can do that, but there's more nuance there as well. So we can see, based on what we see in their browser and their location, there are other signals that tip us off to, are they doing something suspicious? Are there certain things that don't match up that tell us that they're actually, using something that is likely to be used for fraud? People, are they using dev tools? Are they using suspicious, other types of suspicious browsers like headless browsers, for example, things that a normal human wouldn't do, but someone who is trying to commit fraud at scale. Another thing that we see a lot more of now is emulators and virtual machines. If you think about what survey farms used to look like, we think about people co-located in one place. They have a bunch of phones on a rack. They're trying to complete surveys. People still do that, but it's also really easy to spin up virtual machines and emulators. I can have a computer that has a bunch of emulators to emulate a bunch of mobile devices, for example, across different types. We can see that at Detect, and we see what's going on in the background, so we can block them. So we have a number of different signals that we're catching that we're passively observing. Again, we're thinking about making the participant experience as smooth as possible and not adding friction there, always trying to be participant first. So if we can observe things about people and see if they're real or if they're not real, we're going to go ahead and make decisions based off of that. We also give people the ability to ask what essentially is a short pre-screener up front as well. So if we can go beyond just simply observing, but as we all know in market research, it helps to ask questions too. So depending on the audience, we can ask certain questions of people up front. Those questions are specifically designed to catch fraud. If they fail those questions, then we can block them up front. One of the questions we can ask closed-ended questions. We also can ask an open-ended question. And the open-ended question is one of the places where we catch AI usage. So it could be a person who's not really using automation, but they are using AI to either maybe even using an auto translator or something like that to engage with the survey to pretend that there's someone that they're not. So while you can look at the context you can look at the context in the actual text in an open end itself, that tells you something. But if you've actually looked at fraud in the way that we have, their responses, they look good. And sometimes they look too good. And there are some signals, and I could give you some tips. We won't go into it here on how to look and see what's too good, but oftentimes it's really hard to tell. But what you can observe is how people are actually responding to something. So we can see, for example, if they have an open-ended question, they go to another tab, they highlight something when they're trying to complete the open end, they go to another tab, they take some time, they come back and they put in a response. We can see things like that. That's just one example of behaviors like that. Someone is doing something that looks sketchy in order to complete that open end. So it's about the context of the question itself, but it's also about the behavior. So again, we think about it as observing what we can, asking what we need to, and definitely using those behavioral signals to give us a stronger indicator of what is fraudulent before someone comes into a survey, so you don't have, the garbage that comes into a survey. And what we've seen, high correlation, if someone is doing something that is not right in the open end that happens before a survey, they're going to do the same thing in the survey as well. So that's really the overall approach for how we're thinking about Detect proactive cleaning or proactive blocking rather than reactive cleaning, and using technology up front to keep the wrong people out and let the right people in.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much for that breakdown. A couple of things that do come to my mind, again, having been part of this industry for quite some time. One of the things that I really see that's a little bit different in terms of what Detect is doing is it's basically telling you the signals. It's telling you why you classify a certain respondent in a particular bucket. And then I think, and to a certain extent, it leaves the decision to the panel owner, or saying that now it's for you to decide what you want to do, rather than, let's say, saying that, okay, you know what, set up a threshold or a score, and anything above that score is good, anything below that score is bad, and you probably don't even know what that meaning of the score is. Like, should I set it at 30 or should I set it at 70? And really don't know what is a good score. So it's like good, bad, suspicious, and these are the reasons for it. And now you take a call, like with, especially with the suspicious ones, it's more of you as a panel owner to decide that, see, these are the signals that I am getting. Now, whether you want this respondent to go into the survey and maybe clean it after, or you want to stop it here, it's totally up to you, right?
Exactly. It also gives you the ability to combine things that you're seeing in the survey itself. So again, detect is focused on what happens before the survey, but you as the person who's hosting the survey, programming the survey, is going to see other things. Are they speeding? Are they straight lining? Are they failing any in-survey checks? And so maybe if you're on the cusp of trying to decide if they fail a couple of checks and also they're doing some suspicious things too, then yeah, you should probably clean them out.
Makes sense. It's always a cat and mouse game, right? Like we are, as we try and implement technology, the fraudsters are doing the same thing. So it's a constantly evolving thing. So in terms of detect, like what's detect doing in terms of evolving itself to keep it relevant from what it is doing today to what versus what can happen tomorrow? Like again, just a brief idea about what's the roadmap that clients should be excited about in the coming months.
Sure. So as I mentioned, and you did too, Arindam, things are constantly changing. So what worked 6 months ago doesn't work now. What worked honestly 3 months ago in this case isn't working now. So if you don't have anything in place to stop AI agents, like you're in trouble now. You weren't in trouble just a few months ago. So as we see the technology just as a whole evolve, we're trying to stay on top of that. So constantly testing and seeing what happens if someone tries to, use Chat GPT or Claude or some other agent to come in. What signals are we observing that we can use to make sure that we're stopping that? And we're also leaning heavily into things like behavioral biometrics. So observing other signals. So when someone interacts with our pre-screener, essentially, we not only see what they answer, are they using the mouse in a way that makes sense? Sometimes people do silly things like they're on a phone, but they're using a mouse. Obviously, that's a signal, right? But what does the mouse movement look like? What does the typing speed look like? How are they actually engaging with questions themselves? So we have a number of different things that are on our roadmap for release this quarter, which allow us to get even more accurate and catch even other types of signals for how people are interacting. Because we are actually observing, we see when people come in, we have other signals and we can see how people are doing things. We know they're sketchy. What other behaviors are they doing? That helps us to fuel our models so we can continually improve those. So maybe they're going to bypass, other signals at some point. We have a number of different ways to catch them. So we're not relying on static. This is our approach. This is what detect does. What detect does is it's continually evolving to stay one step ahead. And that's a matter of us continually observing fraud that comes through our partners, seeing those sessions, seeing what happens, and then really staying ahead of that.
Awesome. Thanks. We're really excited to see what new features Detect continues to add on. Coming back to the APAC market, Ronnie, one of the things that I've noticed, especially working so many years in this part of the world, is that a lot of research companies in APAC don't always have the resources to integrate a new fraud prevention system directly into their workflow. A lot of small boutique agencies might not have the tech bandwidth. For that matter, they might even need it on an ad hoc basis. A new small boutique agency has just won a big client contract, so they might just need it on an ad hoc basis. From a strategic standpoint, when Detect decided to have this partnership with Acutus AI, I think what was your thought point in having this partnership and you wanting to get into the APAC market?
Yeah, you teased it a little bit, Arindam, in a great way. So, as you mentioned, fraud is really a challenge in APAC, and sometimes people they don't necessarily have the volume of business that they would want to come directly to work through Detect. Sometimes the business is cyclical. Sometimes there are ups and downs. There may be months where they don't have as much volume, or maybe they need it on an ad hoc basis with specific projects. Also, while I like to think to detect integration is easy, it is if you have a tech team that knows how to do the integration, but not everyone does. And so there can be some friction in terms of getting set up with detect or a fraud prevention solution. So that's one of the reasons we were excited to partner with Acutus, trusting you and your team and what you've built. So then we can allow people to come work directly to Acutus. They don't have to set anything up on their end. They really come directly to you. It's essentially plug and play. So if you need fraud prevention on a study coming up, or across all studies moving forward, all you have to do is simply come to Acutus rather than having to worry about integrating directly with Detect. Also, thinking about what you and your team know about the market. You referenced this earlier. There are nuances to working in the APAC region, which is a vast and diverse region as well. And some of those nuances matter. So for us to be able to work with again, small and medium-sized agencies through Acutus, I think really unlocks fraud prevention for the region and is something that's a real necessity. And I'm super excited about the partnership for that reason.
Yep. Thanks, Roddy. We're looking forward to it as well. And one of the things that we do see, especially, it's also about evangelizing. We all understand that fraud is prevalent, it is there, and something needs to be done. But sometimes when we talk about solutions, we always think it from a very enterprise high level. We forget that there are smaller agencies, smaller businesses that are also trying to reach that enterprise level, right? And I think for me, one of the reasons when we first spoke about this partnership, and the thing was that it also gives us the opportunity to go to all these small and medium enterprises and say, you know what, here's a solution for you. We know fraud is a problem, want you to expand your business, and here is a tool that we give you, which you can use as you need. You don't have to give us any commitment, you don't have to give any minimums, and use it. But so it helps you grow your business. And I know, I mean, once you start growing, you'll reach a stage where you say, okay, we need this on a constant basis. But I think it's about enabling them with the tools. So it's about giving it, making it democratic and accessible to all.
I totally agree. One of the things that gets overlooked in our industry, which is always surprising to me, is we forget that so much of this industry is built on those small and medium-sized agencies. Yes, there are the bigger players, of course, but again, so much of what we do requires these smaller businesses to keep things running and to keep these businesses successful. And who's put at a disadvantage because of the increase of fraud and the challenges that we're seeing are just those businesses. So we want to be able to put them on a level playing field with some of the bigger players that we work with to enable fraud prevention. And so this partnership does exactly that.
Yep, absolutely. And I think for these agencies also, I think the impact is immediate. It's no longer a reactive kind of thing. The turnaround times get faster. They're not wasting days on refielding. And again, it's not about just paying for a tool. It's also there's I think there's a domino effect. You don't have to clean up a lot of samples, so your budgets are within what you think you can get. And I think in a way, like I said, for me, when the first initial discussions happened, this was one of the big opportunity areas that I saw is we can democratize. Here is the tool, experiment it, take it. And when we started Acutus, and what our website also says, it's about experimentation. Everything's about experimentation. I think it's about giving you the chance to experiment, even if you are a small business. I'm really excited. I see a huge opportunity within the APAC market, from the standpoint that it's a huge market, it's a diverse market, detect, and just solely focused on the solution. It's like, I have the tool, my focus is just on building this. And I think we will leverage that to go out in the market saying, here is a tool that you can leverage. And we've kind of cut all the jazz around it, and it's like plug and play, take it, that's it, and use it and see what difference it makes. And to me, that's what the flexibility is what makes this partnership truly unique for me. This has been a fantastic discussion. I think just to probably not a case study, but again, I think it's more for our audiences as well. We were one of the first users of dtect's API at Acutus. Uh, it's just numbers, but I think it's very impactful numbers. When we started delivering traffic to marketplaces, typically invalid traffic that went from Acutus to these marketplaces, it was around 45 to 50% mark. So almost half of our traffic was invalid. Once we started using Detect API, our current invalid traffic rate is about 3 to 4%. So what is happening is, what was being stopped at the marketplace end is getting stopped at our end. So now we are very confident that whatever is going to the marketplace is genuine. And obviously, I mean, there is some amount of cleaning that happens after the survey, primarily open ends and all those things. But we know that whatever traffic and we've seen a uptick in our conversion rate as well because of that. So I think this is like I said, more for the audiences. uh, we being one of the first users of API, this is a huge change that we've seen. Invalid traffic coming down from 45 to 50% to 3-4% right now that we're kind of working on. So, Roddy, thank you. I know it's pretty early for you, but thank you so much for your time. I think this is a really good discussion that we've had, and I'm really looking forward to this partnership to bring this technology to the APAC market, which I feel would be a game changer in this region.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Arindam, and I appreciate the time to talk with you and your audience here. Very grateful for what you and your team have done. Again, being one of the earliest API users and going through everything that you did to validate before you make the decision to work with Detect and seeing the real impact there, and ultimately putting fraud prevention in other people's hands who wouldn't normally be able to have that level of technology that they really need. It helps everyone to build trust. The industry is built on trust. Trust, but you also have to verify at the same time. And when you're trusting so many people in the sort of ecosystem and along the chain, sometimes trust is you're trusting too much, right? So trust but verify, and that's exactly what this partnership is allowing people to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, survey fraud isn't going away on its own. So, but I think together with the right tools and right partnerships, we can get ahead of it and deliver. And maybe just one parting note, Roddy, from your perspective, what's the one thing that you'd like APAC researchers to remember when they think about fraud prevention going forward?
I would think about, I'll reiterate one thing I said is this is a tech problem that we need to fight with tech. And you need to make sure you're staying on top of how fraud is changing. That's easier said than done. If you're a large organization, you have a tech team and you have engineers and people who are focused on fraud and are really in the weeds, great. If you don't, you need someone else is going to do that for you. And through the partnership with Detect and Acutus, you can do exactly that. So as you said, fraud's not going anywhere. I wish it were going to go away. It's not. I guess good for me because it helps our business. But it's just the reality of the world that we live in. So we need to accept that and figure out how ultimately we can deliver data that people can actually rely upon. Because at the end of the day, if we don't, and if our customers and end clients don't trust in the data we're delivering, the whole industry suffers. So yes, it's about what we can do as a partnership and help people, but really it's about the whole industry. If we don't solve this problem, we're all in a lot of trouble. So I don't know if I left you on a positive note or a negative one. It depends on where you spin it. But this is where we are.
No, makes sense. And I think again, it's we've been part of this industry for so long. We know that it's such a huge problem that anyone saying that I'll alone solve this, I don't think that's happening. And so I think end of day we'll have to join hands as a force and try to deal with it. I'm pretty sure fraudsters are not working alone in silos as well. They probably a team as well somewhere. So yeah, I think we will have to work as a team. But yeah, Roddy, thank you so much for your time early in the morning, taking time to connect. And I think this really is going to be a huge, impactful message for the entire APAC team. And I think we're really excited and looking forward to this partnership.
Yeah. Thank you again, Arindam.
Thanks, Roddy. Thank you so much for your time.